Good evening. I'm going to go over the watch list for April 27th. I already did the watch list, but apparently the audio cut out or something like 8.5 minutes into it. So I'll just redo the whole thing again and just hope that the mic works this time. So, anyways, getting back to it. Baidu is on the bearish side, which you see here first. You see the head and shoulders on the hourly. I'd watch it underneath the under 100 for probably a gap fill, but I think he gets down to 95, then for a gap fill down to 90 if it's really bad. So I would watch Baidu if the market's weak. Netflix is another one. Netflix has got like a descending wedge. You can say a bullish pennant, but I would rather watch it on the short side because I think it's been up too much. But I think it's a bearish setup, and I like it under 418 to probably come down and retest these areas right into the 380. But I would say 400 probably the first, then because it's the middle Celt on the daily, then possibly even down into the 390s. So Netflix with a bearish descending triangle on the hourly and 4 hour. BA is another one. BA had news about canceling a deal. So if they are hard up for cash, they're not going to go through deals. So that tells me canceling a deal means they're hard up for money, even though they didn't take the government money. They have money, but not enough to go to a deal. I don't know. Depends on how you look at it, but I'm looking at it from that point of view. You get an ascending triangle. Gets below the 125 area, probably go down here and retest the 100 area again, but probably look for like 120 then 100. But BA is tricky. It pops on bad news and drops on good news, so we'll have to see how the market conditions are. But if the market's strong, it can easily come up here and test the 160s and even get into the 180s. But I'm looking at it from the short side. The futures are down right now, like 8 points. So it's hard to say what this week's going to bring. I mean, it's probably going to be the news driven. I don't know what's going on with North Korea. If he's actually has died or not. And if he does, he's going to take his place. People are going to think that it could be positive for the market, but it could not be. Unknown scenarios are more bearish than anything because that scares the market. But once they find out what's going to happen, the market will probably recover. Probably people think that no one could be worse than who's there now, Kim there, but there is worse out there than him. So BA, we'll have to see what happens with that. If the market's weak and it pans out and plays out to the downside, like I think Disney is the other one. It's kind of got a descending wedge right here on the 4 hour. You can see it really clear below 100. The problem is every time it gets underneath 100, it gets bought up. So if it does break with some speed, that it could go down here and retest the 95 and perhaps even fill the gap into the 88 area. So I would watch that. It did close below the daily 200 EMA, and it's been struggling it, so it's been rejecting it. So if it keeps rejecting, it's going to go into 100. So I would watch this. Another one is LUV, which is Southwest Airlines. I have it on my bearish side because it could probably go down a couple of dollars, but you have a descending wedge right here going on the hourly and even daily. Get a big one on the daily. So, but it's showing a positive, a bullish divergence on the RSI and the MACD. So, because all these lows are flat, and when it's rising, that usually means it's going to pop. But sometimes when you show a bearish pattern, they like to flush it really quick to take out the stops before they pop it up. So I wouldn't be a bit surprised if that ends up happening at LV and Southwest Airlines has earnings Tuesday pre-market, so we'll have to see with that. I mean, everyone's expecting Boeing, which Boeing has earnings too on Wednesday pre-market, which I don't know if I mentioned that or not. But either way, both airlines, if everyone's anticipating it to be bad, and it probably will be bad. So, but what's been happening is that all these stocks have been popping on ER because it's not as bad as they thought, or somehow they lowered the net so they can hit it over the net or whatever. scenario. So I think that everyone's going to load up thinking it's going to be really bad, and it's probably going to end up popping. So I would watch it on earnings, and that's going to be it for the bearish side. As far as the bullish side, I have when you get kind of an ascending triangle going on in the daily, and you can see it on the 4 hour and on the 1 hour. So it gets over 80. I don't even need to get 80. Like it gets over 78, it's probably going to retest 83. And if it gets any momentum going, it could get up into 100. But I think that it could possibly do that, especially if wind gets momentum, it can easily hit 100 if the market's strong and there's good news coming out. So Spotify is another one, but Spotify has earnings Tuesday pre-market, and you have Spotify that has like it is a descending wedge right here, possibly even a head and shoulders on the hourly on Spotify on the hourly, but on the daily, it's touched the 14 SMA. I mean, it could go down a little more, but it looks like it's making a bull flag. So showing it's oversold on the 4 hour, it could pop. So if it does, I mean, look at over 140 to retest the 145, 146 highs. And if it does get to that, maybe even get into the 150s. So I would watch Spotify, even though they do have earnings. Another one is John Deere, which is DE. Kind of got the same scenarios. A lot of these plays have the same kind of setups. So like in a rising ascending triangle right here, if you want to draw it out like that. And I know it did pop over and got rejected, but I mean it's still within it. I mean, it doesn't have to be perfect. So over 140, get into the 150s and maybe fill the gap on Deere. And I think Caterpillar has earnings, which I have Caterpillar. I'll do that in a little bit, but Caterpillar has earnings, and that will probably affect the stock too. So that's it for John Deere. Amazon is another one. I know Amazon is expensive, has a rising ascending triangle right here on the 4 hour, daily, and hourly. And I think that it's going to pop. It has earnings this Thursday after hours. I'm only bringing it up because if you play Amazon normally without earnings, it's very expensive, but with earnings this week, it's going to be like quadruple expensive, the option. So I will look at this on Friday after the earnings, when it has its reaction to the earnings. And I think that earnings are probably going to be blistering. So I would expect probably Amazon to be over 2,700. But Amazon, when it has a really good earnings, ends up selling off the next day. So I would watch for a pop and drop on Amazon on Friday after earnings. But I think that if the earnings is good, you're going to see 2,700 on Amazon. So Baba is another one. Baba, I mean, it's pulling the same thing. It's making a bear flag. It's bouncing up to 20 EMA, which is I have my Kelt set at. And you can see it on the 4 hour that it gets, the 4 hours is oversold, so it did get above the 30 on the 4 hours. So I think that it gets over 205, it could retest the 216s, and maybe even get into the 220s if the market's strong, and we'll have to see what happens. Walmart is another one, kind of flagging right here. I would watch Walmart over 130 to make a run to make new all-time highs. So I would watch Walmart. I mean, it's just going to keep going up and up and up. So Walmart's one I'd watch for a break over 130. WeDay. Let's see. Yeah, WeDay's another rising ascending wedge right here. So over 147 to get into the 150s. It could even fill this gap into the 158s. That depends if the market's strong. So we'll have to see what happens with workday. So I'm not too. There's so many plays out there. I probably won't pay attention to this one that much, but you guys can if you want. FedEx. Same thing, looks like the same kind of chart. I mean, like I said, there's so many plays that look like this. You just pick the stock that you like and just trade those one or two. But FedEx, over 120, over 124. It's going to go to 130. It gets to 130 and breaks. I mean, it's got room up here until the 140 area. So that's what I would be watching on FedEx. CAT is one we just talked about. It's got earnings this week. Let's see. Looks like Tuesday pre-market. It did close over the middle, barely, and it could have an ER run up to 120, even fill the gap into 125. And who knows if Caterpillar's ER is going to be good or not? I wouldn't imagine it would be, but who knows? With these, a lot of these tickers, you think they're going to be bad, they aren't, or they are, and they still pop, whatever. So CAT can make a run to 125 and end up selling off on ER or something like that if it's bad. So I would watch that. Facebook is something I'd watch for continuation. If with the news with Zoom and their message rooms and stuff like that, I think that Facebook could just keep going. I think it can get to 200, and if it does get to 200, it's going to end up closing that gap at 210. So buying the dips on Facebook this week, if the market is somewhat flat or even slightly red, would probably be good. There's so much hype with the message rooms and Zoom that it could go against the market. So I'd watch Facebook on that. And the last one or two is EA. EA is got kind of like an ascending wedge going on right here again, over 117 to make a run to 120. I mean, gaming is big. People spending money on games, playing their games. There's nothing else for them to do. So EA just keeps looking good. But I think that I was going to get it this past week, and I couldn't because I think the spread was really, really bad. So you'd have to see what the spreads look like. Another one is Activision. They have the same kind of setup as EA and the same kind of gaming setup. So if EA spreads bad, look to Activision. They're pretty much running the same exact way. So you can pick or choose if it's EA or Activision for that. Then that's what I would do. Hopefully the audio goes through on all this, and I apologize for that, but I don't know what happened. So if you're not in the room, you should be, and that's going to be it. Thanks.